Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
Good evening.
We'll wait a few minutes longer for a couple people to join. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Tonight we have Mike Travato on the keyboard hosting our Zoom meeting, so thank you for that, Mike.
No problem.
And
Bear with me just in case.
yeah, right. Right. I figured that was a good segue into any disclaimers you might have. So in addition to Mike, Janet is on, and Joe Aberdale is on, Skip is on, Will Sullivan is on, and is Alfred on?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And that's all I see, but it's enough to get started. Somebody has entered the waiting room. I'm not sure. Mike, is that something you take care of?
I will check for that.
Okay.
Oops. There you go. Not sure who that is. Chris, I made you and Will co-hosts as well.
Okay.
It looks like everyone's in it.
Yeah, Kurt thought he joined, but maybe he's running a little bit late. First order of business would be approval of the minutes of meeting from the August 20th meeting. They were sent out in draft form, and then just more recently I sent it out in final, having received no comments other than tinkering with what time we adjourned. So does anyone have any comments, corrections on those minutes?
No, I move that we accept the minutes.
Skip, aye.
Okay.
I think the minutes have to have a motion and second by task force members.
True.
So I thought Skip seconded.
We have 4 here, I believe: Alfred, Skip, Chris, and myself. So that would be a quorum. So if Alfred or Skip or Chris want to, or I'm willing to make the motion that the minutes be accepted as presented.
I accept it.
Skip, that was you second?
Yes.
Okay. And do we have to vote individually on this, Joe?
No. Okay. No, you can call the roll if it's unanimous. If it isn't, then we can go individually. All in favor?
Okay, so all in favor, say yay.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Staying with the category of informational or administrative rather, I sent out an informational update earlier today. My intent going forward would be to continue to update information like that, meaningful information, so that everyone gets the advantage of learning about any happenings. And I propose to keep it as a running log so that you don't have to keep a bunch of little scraps of paper in order to have all the updates. I'll just keep it literally as a running log. I'll put the new items on top, and then we'll have everything in one place if we need to refer to it. So this won't replace the minutes of the meeting. Those will remain a formal document, but the informational updates will be in place going forward. For tonight's minutes, again, I would request people to keep your own notes so that when the draft comes out, you can review it against your own notes for accuracy. With that, let's turn to the action item list. And again, just as a reminder, new items or updates to old items show in red. And after they show as closed for 1 or 2 sessions, then I will hide the row, but I won't delete it. So item number 8, it goes back to when the notice of intent expired and the Conservation Commission order of conditions. GEI is going to reach out this week to Hillary just to be ready to go. Everyone is positioning themselves for piggyback dredging, and when we get to the permit and the NMFS issue down below, we'll have more on what might be an alternate path to ensure we can piggyback this year. And item 13, we can go through the permits as we get closer to the town dredging. Number 15 is an older item reassigned, sequence of events for state funds. And we will talk about that when we get to strategy and political on tonight's call. Number 22 was an old item about nitrogen analysis, and that's actually within the purview of the wastewater committee, so I've closed it here. Number 24, one of the things that we need is and I may have it somewhat duplicated. Mike, what is the timeline that we have to pay attention to for public notice and bid period and all? I don't want to lose the clock for piggyback dredging.
Yeah, I had that conversation yesterday with GEI, and right now there's no issue with that, but just an optimistic timeline. As far as soup to nuts, getting a bid out on the street and having it received and accepting someone will probably be about a total of a 6 to 8 week timeline. Everything all in.
I'm sorry, how long?
Probably 6 to 8 weeks all in, till we can actually have a bidder, in place, for a contract, including the contract signed and all that. So that was GEI's estimate on that. So it's not, the bidding process itself isn't, could be a, having the bid out would be probably about a 2-week process, but there's a lot of other things that go into that in between. So just to give you some sense on that. So their feeling was that because they're gonna oversee the bidding process, we'll monitor it from the town perspective, and there's right now there's a comfort level taking the Army Corps permitting side here. So I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about strictly just from the timeline to for procurement itself. So we're making an assumption there that there'll be a permit in hand within that time period to do that.
Yeah, but if we're talking 8 weeks overall and we're mid-September, that puts us mid-November to start work December 1st. So the clock it's manageable, and we may have to shorten it, but it's certainly not luxurious.
Yeah. No, we understand that. And
so further down, we'll talk about we probably need to draft a public advertisement or a public notice advertising for bids. And
well, that just to be clear, that all will be handled by GEI. We're contracting with GEI to be the consultant for this, including for the bid process. So you should not concern yourselves with the actual bid process itself. I mean, obviously, we want your input on it, but they will be handling the mechanics of that.
Okay. Public outreach plan 25A is in progress, essentially finalized with the exception of if people saw Nancy's recent email, we should make it clear in there that dredging will be going 24 hours a day. So we can make that little adjustment, and then I'd say it's ready to distribute. 26 is not something that we're dealing with now. I don't think we will go for 2 feet of overdredge. We can talk about it in the future, but it's not an immediate issue. National Marine Fisheries will be its own discussion this evening. And 29, we just want to confirm the availability for town funds to perform piggyback dredging in 2020. Skip had raised this question several months ago when we were in the basement, and I know Dan Hort said that yes, the funds would and could be made available, and he didn't see it as an issue. We just need to make sure that we are embarked upon trying to do piggyback dredging still in 2020. So
yes, Chris, just yes, that appropriation was approved at, I believe, the last town meeting, and so it's just just a matter of us handling the technical side of bonding for those monies. That was that $7.5 million, and then the question becomes: do we do full bonding for all of that all at once under 2020, or do we do that incrementally? But that appropriation is there for at least that amount of money.
okay, good. 30 and all the subsets to 30 had to do with gathering documents just to demonstrate that the South Mooring area has always been used for mooring. And so you can see the items that we actually were able to come up with, and it includes Will came up with the mooring application from, I think it was 1982, one of the years. We had several aerial photos that clearly show the boats there. And we had a statement from Slade Associates that they used to do the mooring layouts, and by their own observations, it was always used as a mooring area. So I consider this item closed. GEI will get these, all these documents over to the Army Corps. It was, in fact, the Corps representative, Norm Ferris, who had suggested we do this. I don't think this is the main issue, but I just wanted to make sure we addressed it and removed that from any further consideration by Marine Fisheries. 30F is still open as GEI goes through their documents. They're putting together this compendium, which we hope to get some of these documents next week from them to keep their eye out for any references to the South Mooring area back in 1999, 2000 timeframe. And I do have a question that maybe people can answer. Why didn't we do the South Mooring back then? I assume it was money?
I'll go out on a limb and say that nobody was really paying attention, following through on the work. But I wish, you know who would know that is Alfred.
I'm here. Hello.
Yes.
Yep.
Hi, Alfred.
It wasn't just that. It was the fact that we didn't have the money to do everything.
Okay.
And we did discuss coming back, but as you can see, we discussed it. We didn't fund it to go with it.
So, I assumed it
I
assumed it would have been a money issue. It sounds like it was. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't anything out there lurking that from a technical perspective, that precluded doing it.
In addition to what Janet said, I think it was also a matter of not having a strong advocacy from the town to put pressure on the state to do the second area as well.
Right. Which is a euphemism for money.
Not necessarily, no. It's, as Janet said, leadership and advocacy. Unfortunate because at that time, the state was funding 75%.
Right. Okay, 32, we're talking about establishing liaison with marine fisheries, including a seat at the table. And we spoke last meeting about Joe and Harry taking the lead on that. And then a little bit later in tonight, we have an agenda. I sent out a recommendation or suggestion where we reorganized the co-chairs primarily for focusing on regulatory issues. Number 33, at the time we were going to draft a letter, and then subsequent to the draft being issued, several comments suggesting that we not issue the letter. And I think that's probably the general consensus. So unless there's an objection, I'll close this item since it's no longer current.
So Chris, why would you close it?
Because there'll be I'll call it a larger initiative or more detailed action item list led by Joe and Harry.
Okay, thank you.
Skip, number 34, I know you had made some contact with some people within the scientific community, but I don't remember if you had specific names or whether you were still waiting on feedback.
I have the two names. They're not the people that are, they were originally with the National Marine Fisheries Service. And one is John Bullard, B-U-L-L-A-R-D. He's a trustee of the Buzzards Bay Coalition. And I hadn't gotten in contact with him yet.
Let me defer to Joe on this. Skip, if you get names at this point, I would say pass them on to Joe. And, that will be part of the dialogue and the coordination that we're going to embark upon. But we'll keep it one-stop shopping rather than several of us reaching out.
Okay, but in that one, I was informed by the coalition that I need to send an email to request to do this and for the purpose. So I can do that so that somebody can then contact them.
And I'm sorry, for the benefit of everyone else, what would be the content of the email? What is the specific?
I have to say that the town of Wellfleet has a dredging project in the process, and that we're interested to find out more about this issue in the what the National Marine Fisheries Service has in regard to where they indicate there is a so-called endangered species involved in this area that we want to take and do the dredging in.
I don't know what fisheries has actually said officially. We've had what I would consider anecdotal stuff, including the 50-year rule, which is bogus. I guess, Joe, do you think we should reach out at this time or wait until we figure out who the players are on the fisheries
Yeah,
side.
I think we should pursue it from the angle of the process we're going to talk about further down on the agendas, Chris.
Okay, so Skip, if you would hold that thought with the idea that then we'll probably share the information once we have that discussion.
Right, I just had the names, I haven't moved until I heard
Yeah.
where we're going.
Okay.
But we do, from getting back from like GEI, they've been telling us that there's a stopper there coming from the National Marine Fisheries Service. So,
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And we've heard, as you said, there may be wildlife involved that may be their major concern. They had, and again, we got the second, third hand. They trotted out, well, it's been over 50 years since we dredged, and that's a true statement. But there is no regulation there's no bright line that says 50 years. So this will be getting a lot of attention as we go forward.
So do we know at this point, is it a fact that you have to have approval from the National Marine Fisheries Service? They have to come through with some type of a permit?
Well, my understanding is the Corps doesn't have to have their approval, but because they're sister agencies, they try and play nice in the sandbox. And in a few minutes, when we get to the specifics of it, there's a potential possibility we could just get the permit issued that would allow us to do piggyback for in and around the L pier and the fuel docks, and also the 2 access channels. I think that's more yards than we can get in December, but it's nice to have that option.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable, but we were talking also about doing the mooring area.
Yeah, but we weren't looking to do the mooring area in 2020.
Okay, so we have time to negotiate how we're going to do this. Okay.
Yeah, perhaps.
That sounds reasonable.
35 is a placeholder. In the future, we anticipate we may need to re-engage our lobbyist.
Yes.
And then 36, we're going to talk about shortly, approval for a GEI to go ahead and do the RFP documents. So that takes us to number 3 on the agenda, Army Corps permits and fisheries issues and strategy. Again, a little duplication here. South Anchorage, we provided all that information and it'll get to the Corps. And as I mentioned, GEI is gathering some documentation. Another item under this permit is the idea of a bifurcated permit where the Corps would issue a permit to allow us to do everything but the south mooring. And in my recent discussion with GEI, it sounds like the Corps would have an appetite for that. They have involved the Corps Division Chief, Barbara Newman, and the Corps is well aware how important it is that we do some dredging this year to get from, certainly from the ramp over to the channel. So I would say we should pursue this, make sure there's no downside, but I think we should pursue getting this bifurcated permit. Any thoughts, comments?
One thought would be not to necessarily reveal that strategy right now, but hold it aside and shoot for the whole thing. We recently learned that the Army Corps doesn't necessarily need the approval from National Marine Fisheries Service, but would like it. And I think that is an open door for us to pursue full steam ahead on the whole project. And if we were unable to do that, then as a backup strategy to look at the North Access Channel and Area 1.
Okay, So just hold our fire.
Yeah, I think we're going to know a good deal more within the next week or so. But I wouldn't want to reveal that to them at this time and have them take it.
Right.
And then have to have another battle with them down the road rather than trying to resolve the whole thing right now.
Okay. Any other comments?
I'm concerned that if we start separating things, we may lose the South Mooring area.
share
the fact
that.
we didn't,
Yeah.
the fact that we didn't dredge it the last time, you know, which we should have. Are we going to be the point that we'll never get to dredge it? So, I mean, we have to be very cautious not to show any weakness about that parcel, because if the Corps doesn't come back and dredge the mooring area, and we have to do maintenance dredging, we could be doing maintenance dredging in the Corps area, and I don't know how that would affect the program. Not only that, if we don't dredge everything, we're going to be doing maintenance dredging much sooner. So, I mean, the whole dredging idea works to slow down maintenance dredging, too, because if we only dredge parts of this, it's going to fill in so quick, we're going to be doing maintenance dredging in a year or two. So I wouldn't take any consideration of dropping any part of this out any way, shape, or form. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I support that, but there's another angle to support that premise as well. Concurrent with dealing with the federal people, we're also going to be revving up to deal with state people who will be, you know, contributing hopefully a substantial amount to do areas 1 and 2. And we want to be able to meet them at the table and show them that we have all the permits necessary. If we aren't shovel ready, we learned in the past with the permits in hand, that's a real negative. That's a hole we're going to have to dig out of. So my thought is, as Alfred and Janet said, to go full steam ahead, to try and resolve it now. That way, when we sit at the table with the various parties, we can tell them that we have the permits and we're ready to go ahead.
Okay. So this item is on hold for now. This item meaning the bifurcated permit.
Yes.
It's in the proverbial back pocket, and we can always reassess it later.
And I think it's going to be defined in the next few weeks.
One thing I did, and that was going through the records. We had 2 cartons of materials that covered dredging back decades. And one place that said that the Corps of Engineers had dredged into that mooring area, an area 800 by 600 feet to the depth of 10 feet plus 1. So it means to me that they have the infrastructure in their company, where they have the prior knowledge of how that area was handled before. So I do think that they may be still interested if we could come up with a solid plan.
Yeah, there's another another part of this we're going to pursue. Prior to the dredging project now, it was always overseen in areas 1 and 2 by the Massachusetts State Division of Waterways. This is the first time it was taken out of their purview. And Chris and I are going to be pursuing, I've already put a phone call into them. They haven't gotten back. I've spoken in the past years with the chief engineer there, but I think they may very well have a hefty file of documentation on their partnership with the town to dredge both areas 1 and 2 in the past. Area 1 in 2001, Area 2 in 1957. And if that is the case, if I have to, I'll drive to Boston to get that file, because I would think it would bolster our case.
Okay, any other items or discussion on this particular issue? Okay, let's move on to political support and additional resources. And we've sort of almost covered it, but the key item here is I had sent out a suggestion as to how to optimize our resources and reorganize a little bit on the committee. I assume people maybe had a chance to read that. Any discussion on it?
Chris, can you give a quick review of what you sent out? I read it, but just tell me a little bit.
Sure.
I'm trying not to use a lot of paper, so I'm using my phone for notes, and it's not easy.
Okay. No, the gist of it is obviously this marine fisheries and ultimately funding will be the two most important items, certainly in the near term. And so given the fact that Joe Aberdale has a history on the previous committee, and also his career included state government, the idea would be that that Joe and I would be co-chairs. Okay. Joe would focus on the strategy, which includes the political, and I would focus on, we'll call it technical and administrative, for want of a better word. But that would allow us to, allocate specific tasks. And then within that, we still need the support and expertise of everyone on this committee, because everyone on the committee has a different type of expertise, all of which is important to the project and needed to be successful on this project. So that's the gist of what I had put out.
That's right. No, I thought that was a good idea. I mean, I'm all for the two of you acting in your good capacities and proceeding. And as I listen to this, I think of what a good job you guys are doing. Chris, Joe, Skip, Alfred, you really are. So go for it.
Okay, so I would, if there's any other questions or comments on this, if not, I would entertain a motion to approve co-chairs.
Make a motion that we go ahead and approve co-chairs in order to focus on the objective of getting the political backup that we need.
And we'll look for a second.
Second it.
I'm sorry, who was that?
Kevin.
Kevin.
Oh, Kevin, okay. Thank you, Kevin.
Yep.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion passes.
First, before you move on, you might want to entertain a motion for a task force secretary whose charge would be to take the minutes.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Start with volunteers.
Well, I was going to ask Joe, do you want me to ask somebody in town to do it, or do you want a volunteer from this committee? We've always had a volunteer from this committee.
Yeah, I think the open meeting law requires a member of the committee to be formally voted upon as secretary.
So not someone from town hall?
No, no.
Okay.
I mean, if there's no volunteers, I'm chair of the Marina Advisory Committee. We lost our secretary recently. There are no volunteers, so I take them. So if there are no volunteers, I suppose Chris and I could do it.
So just for people who don't know, like, I'm not on this committee, so I can't do it. I just kind of act like I'm on this committee, but I do think Chris is doing a good job. You're doing a really good job. I love your Excel sheets.
No good deed goes unpunished.
I think he's doing a marvelous job.
All right, moving right along. Thank you. Okay, piggyback dredging, and I sent the proposal out. Along with two fairly minor observations, subject to agreement and approval. It's kind of a standard document, and so within it, GEI says controlling law will be state of Connecticut. It's no problem, and I think it should be Massachusetts, just to be consistent with where we are. Any objections?
Definitely, you got to switch it to Massachusetts.
And then the other question or comment that was in the proposal is whether we wanted to use town contract documents or have them formulate the RFP using EJCDC, which is the Engineers Joint Contract Document Council. If people are familiar, AIA has standard documents, and so does this Joint Engineers Council. Unless the town has some pretty comprehensive documents, we probably should consider using the Engineers Joint Council standard documents, which we could also modify on certain areas, but I think it would give us a very mature starting point.
I think that would be acceptable to the dredging contractors that would be involved.
And I had this conversation with Dan Robbins as well. I think that those standard documents, the acronym and initials escape me at the moment here. You just mentioned, Chris, but the ones that are similar to AIA. I think they probably would be acceptable by the town. We would otherwise, the option would be for us to bring legal in and have to redraft a whole set of documents to that effect. So I've asked Dan to forward me those documents so we could at least review them. So I think the answer here would be for us to send those to legal to review and make sure they're okay with those standardized documents.
Okay. And when you say legal, meaning our outside town council?
Town council, right, KP Law.
Okay. So what we need to do if we want GEI to begin work is we need to approve them to proceed with formulating the RFP documents. And I pointed out that if for whatever reason, and the word permit might come to mind, we were unable to proceed with piggyback dredging this year, December of this year, we will have incurred a cost, and I don't have the number in front of me, but it was like $60,000. I think it was in my memo. It's really not a loss. It's not a lost cost because all these documents would be required for our future RFPs for dredging. Minor adjustments required in the scope description and the quantities, but other than that, the bulk of the work would be necessary anyway.
Yeah, Chris, just to confirm that, there's 5 tasks mentioned in that scope of work. The first 3 are design phase and bid phase, both of which need to be done regardless of whether we're piggybacking or not. We might obviously alter the bid phase a little bit relative to the piggyback relative to the versus the full dredging, but the task 4 and 5 are construction related. So those wouldn't kick in until construction started. So yeah, we're talking about minimal exposure here, and it would be money we'd have to spend anyway for that. So.
Okay, so the process and procedure for approving this, is that a town administration thing and the task force merely makes a recommendation?
Yeah, so yeah, ultimately this this contract probably would get approved by the select board because it exceeds the minimum that the town administrator can sign without select board approval. But the thing I would just ask, would like the task force to weigh in on, and will as well, obviously, is the actual scope of work involved with the contract with GEI. Just confirming that that's all, you know, good information, and that's a good scope of services. So, you know, I rely on you folks to guide us on whether that information, all of the scope of services, is accurate.
Chris, per the town's charge of the dredging task force, it is to pursue and manage the dredging operations. So I think it has to start here with a task force vote and then work its way up through town administration.
Okay, so let's bring it to a vote. Again, we'll entertain a motion to, I'm sorry, is there any other discussion before we vote on a motion?
Are you voting to approve the scope of services?
Yes.
I just want to check, have you all reviewed them I want to make sure you all reviewed them and are comfortable with them. That doesn't have to be made, that decision tonight if you haven't, because obviously it's a very important component here. Let's make sure these 5 tasks are exactly what you want happened.
Perhaps following up on that, it might be a good idea. We're going to meet again soon to give task force members an opportunity to pour over those documents. They are important before we take a formal vote on them.
Yeah, on this GEI Standard Professional Services Agreement, number 8, I believe, is a key one. It's allocation of risks. And that's, I think, where we need competent legal perusal of what risks in here are not covered that should be covered.
I would suggest concurrent with what I just offered, putting it off for a couple of weeks so everybody could review it. Concurrent with that, perhaps Mike could submit it to town council so that when we meet again, we would all have the information, both the legal and the task force review of it.
So again, the first half, the main portion of this agreement is boilerplate legalese. Which certainly we're going to send through legal, but I'm more concerned with the because we'll have legal put eyes on that. I'm more concerned with the scope of services themselves and making sure that this task force has approved those before we contract for those services.
Okay, so it makes sense to defer, but I would caution about for a couple of weeks. I think we need to stay focused on it. And again, if we're talking an 8-week cycle on things, that puts us mid-November for piggyback dredging, which we want to start 2 weeks later. So we just have to be mindful of the clock.
Yeah, I would hope you would be able to do this shorter than 2 weeks because
yes,
that can affect that timeline. I really was hoping that certainly the legalese of this, that's something we certainly could leave up to town administration to deal with. I would rather you focus, and just as my advice, rather you focus, especially for time, on the tasks within that scope of services to make sure that that's accurate. And you know, hopefully that wouldn't take a 2-week turnaround time. I think it's all there, but, and Bill, I don't know to what degree you've reviewed this, but again, I'm not on the task force and haven't been privy to prior conversations with this, and I'm not the technical person, so I don't want to be presumptuous in saying that those tasks are accurate. But we just want an approval of the task force before we move forward with this contract for that reason.
Yeah, I think that's a super idea, because putting it in the hands of the town administration, they've done this, some of the people have been involved before with dredging in terms of the, or there should have probably been in the past some legal authority, it's out there, some person that was involved in past agreements. And so I definitely think that would take away us trying to be looking for key problems into this document that leave the town of Wellfleet wide open for some liability versus, somebody else.
Mike,
Yeah.
when for us to advertise our next meeting, what would be the soonest date we could do that?
Well, you need a 48-hour, 48 hours on work days, Monday to Friday. So,
We could do it Tuesday.
if something got posted tomorrow, it would be Tuesday.
So what do you think about Wednesday, Thursday?
You're asking the task force that question, I assume?
Yes, I'm asking the task force Wednesday, Thursday.
Wednesday or Thursday for what?
To have a meeting, even if it's just on the fact that we approved the or finalize the questions for the contract with GEI to do the thing.
Scope of services.
Yeah.
That would be a pretty basic short agenda. If we posted it tomorrow, why not shoot for Tuesday evening?
What are we talking about posting? I'm not following what has to be posted.
The
Meeting
agenda.
notice.
Our meeting.
You have to notify the town clerk and get approval for the date and time, and also provide the agenda so it can be posted publicly.
Oh, okay. Even for this discussion we're going to have for, okay. Yeah. Okay, so
Tuesday at 7, acceptable to people?
I have no problem with that, as long as we keep it to that. Basically, I think we should only have that part of our discussion.
yes.
Skip, Kevin?
I agree. Tuesday, 7.
Bye.
Yeah.
Everybody good?
Chris? Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Chris, you and I can post that tomorrow.
Okay.
So I would just advise you just to, as part of that posting, to post that scope of services as well.
Mm-hmm.
And Mike, concurrent with this, you're going to chase the legalese, right?
Right.
Okay, great. Okay.
All right. This is Alfred again. I have a question on number 26. I know we went over it quickly.
Yeah.
But I don't know if this is a question for GEI. If we can dredge an additional over dredge of a foot or whatever, my question would be, what does that analysis cost now versus 5 years from now when we start doing maintenance dredging? Because it's going to buy us another year or two, possibly. So my question is, are we better off doing it now so it gives us a better time or gives us more time to get ready for maintenance dredging? And what is the cost difference going to be?
The other question to that probably should include, is it allowed by permit?
That's why I'm asking for GEI to come back with a quick statement to say, you got to get a permit. It's not worth doing. The permit is easy. It's going to cost twice as much to do it later. It's going to cost the same later. Those are simple questions that ballpark questions I was looking for, or answers.
Yeah.
The
cost, assuming that the piggyback dredger is reasonable, meaning Cashman, the cost now, I'd say, would be very favorable. You know, the Cashman price for the channel came in very favorable. So I think the cost part of that suggests, yeah, if we can do it now, we're always better off. And then the permit part of the question we'll have to pose, but we will.
Can I just ask where Alfred is referring to? You mentioned 28. I'm not sure which
26.
Which document we're looking at. You
Oh,
say
I'm sorry. The action list that we're working on tonight.
Oh, I'm looking at the proposal here with GEI.
No, I'm sorry. I jumped. My mistake. The one that says Monday, September 7th on it.
Yeah, no, that over dredge is an old question, but certainly pertinent now. So we'll get the information from GEI.
But I think we need to look at it from everywhere. That's why I'm bringing it up, because if the town of Wellfleet can spend a little more money now, and we can skip a year or two into the future before we're doing maintenance dredging, it may be money well spent.
To support that, I think there's an additional factor involved in the strategy department. Massachusetts has made it very clear to us in several meetings that they are not going to co-fund anything in Area 1 or 2 without having a definitive maintenance dredging plan and permitting all approved and ready to go. As they said to us at the last meeting, we don't want to be back at the table 8 or 9 years from now looking for another $15 million. So anything that we can secure now for that kind of work to be done so that we can show them that we're ready is really to our advantage. We need to, even though we're dealing with the dredging of the channel now, we need to begin to formulate a strategy to approach the state, because it's right around the corner for the Inner Harbor.
So we will reinvigorate item number 26, because these are all good points about overdredge now versus maintenance later. So we'll follow up with GEI on that. Okay, anything else about piggyback dredging? Okay, the channel dredging, just an update. It was in the informational update I sent out earlier, but Cashman's going to mobilize their field office the week of September 21st and their dredging equipment the following week and be ready to start digging on October 1st. They're coordinating all this with Will. The crew boat will come in and out of the L Pier, which makes sense. Will, any other updates for the group?
Sorry, no. They will be here next week to do some surveying. Other than that, no more updates. We're just going over some layout with them and positioning where we want them to be, where we need them to be, and where they'd like to be.
Okay. Public outreach was more or less finalized, except we can add the notice that dredging will be 24 hours a day. Will, do you want to make that adjustment to the document, or you want me to just tweak it and send it back to everybody?
I can just make it to it before we send it out.
Okay, so you'll do a revision to it?
Correct.
Okay.
Is that good for them to have this dropping it down to 2 shifts in for some reason?
I wouldn't put that in the public outreach, because we don't know if they're going to drop back to 2 shifts. They might. It really depends on their production and the turnaround time on towing the scows. I wouldn't want to say it's only for 2 weeks and establish expectations only to find out that schedule and production rates are such that they have to either stay on 24 hours a day or at some point revert to it.
No, I think less is more in that case.
In the
Yeah.
in the conference meeting with the Army Corps engineer and Cashman Construction that we participated in the other day, I think they made it clear that they themselves don't know that at this point in time. There are variables, with the weather and so forth. I think what they said was, we need to start digging and see how it goes. And we'll revise the plan on a weekly basis.
Well, if we're also going to look at trying to go deeper by a foot, and we already have 10 feet plus an overrun of a foot, if we're going to go deeper, that means more cubic yards to move. And the weather starts deteriorating as you get closer to January.
I don't think the weather is a major factor. They work in bad weather unless it's really over the top.
Yeah, I have a photograph of them when they were, there was ice and snow in the harbor.
Mm-hmm.
One of their dredges were there.
I think basically their reasoning behind it was that they kind of reserving the right to, and they have the ability to mobilize more or less units depending on their progression. And they can do it quick and fast, being based out of Boston and New Bedford is where this current project crew is coming from. They have that ability, and they will be using that depending on their schedule and our schedule that has been agreed to.
Oh, so that's a good thing to have in a contract too.
Yeah, and the project engineer also made a statement toward the end of the meeting that if all goes well, it may very well be completed by the end of November. No promises.
Right.
But he did make
It's encouraging though, and their minimum monthly contractually is 75,000 yards, and so obviously they want to get in and get out. They are aware that we're looking at piggyback dredging, and they would certainly be interested in that. So we need to
I raised that question in the conference to Cashman, and they've got a good reputation. They did the dredging in Boston Harbor. And the Cashman project engineer said that they certainly were open to that. So he didn't close the door based on his schedule, which I think suggests to everybody that they have it open.
Yeah, I can see that they're a business.
Positive.
They're a business and they'd like to have more revenue coming in a tough year.
Skip, one clarification. The 1 foot over dredge that we're going to follow up on would not apply to the channel. We're talking about the town stuff.
Right.
So if we are able to do piggyback dredging, then it might apply to us nominally in the month of December, but it wouldn't affect what's on Cashman's plate right now.
Okay, so that would be a positive.
Yeah, the Army Corps mentioned a while back that in looking at the contractors, they have a pretty good idea as to who is good at doing this work. And they look favorably upon Cashman. They have partnered before. So between Cashman and the Army Corps that does this all the time, I feel very confident they're going to do a professional, timely job.
Okay, next meeting we said will be Tuesday at 7 o'clock. And going forward, I would envision that maybe we'd get on some type of a bi-weekly routine. Obviously, much like happened tonight, anything that comes up urgent, we'll schedule a meeting as appropriate. But if we're going to get on somewhat of a bi-weekly routine, I propose either Mondays at 7 or Tuesdays at 7. Not including this next one, which we already said would be Tuesday.
Wouldn't Tuesdays have to alternate with the selectmen's meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah, Monday, I think Monday's a good deal.
Everybody good for Mondays at 7? So conceptually anyway?
Yeah.
I agree. Mondays
So
at 7.
That
I
would
agree.
be the 28th, Chris.
28th is Yom Kippur.
What's today? Today's the 10th.
It seems like that's awfully late, but yeah.
Well, for that week, we could do the 29th and then go back. Is there a selectmen's meeting on the 29th, Janet?
Yeah, I'm looking from my calendar. No, Selectmen's is the 22nd,
Uh-huh.
Tuesday, the 22nd.
So we could do Tuesday, the 29th, and then after that, go on a Monday schedule if that was acceptable to everybody.
Fine with me.
All right, just skip.
Okay.
Alfred?
No, it's fine with me.
Okay.
Any other items for discussion?
Yeah, I have one question. I recall that GEI is the one that was asked a couple times about the National Marine Fisheries Service, that it was a person in that organization that GEI, some representative, talked to a number of times, and feedback to us was that they didn't want to budge. They wanted to say that that was new dredging. Is that a real fact, or is that just some supposition?
No, that's the crux of the matter, that for whatever reason, they seem to think that it is not maintenance dredging. It's, you know, and again, anecdotally, we've heard, well, it's been so long. At one time, it was implied that after 50 years, but there is no regulation that cites 50 years. After 20 or 30 years, the agencies start to look at it a little bit closer. So part of this initiative that Joe and Harry will be focused on is find out for sure what marine fisheries is objecting to. We don't want to go out and bring them a bunch of rocks and they say, well, that's the wrong color rock. To solve the issue, we need to find out for sure what the issue is.
I think the next week or so is going to reveal a lot and flush them out. One of the things we have learned over the years is that agencies like National Marine Fisheries have a lot of discretion with their actions. They're not always pinned down to the letter of the law. We certainly learned that dealing with the Endangered Species Agency with the turtle problem. So we're going to find out, you know, when they are seeking to block us, if they continue to do so, is that a discretionary judgment on their part, or are they relying on regulations? Our goal is to find that out and then to move ahead and get at the table and finalize this.
Yeah, I think that's a key item, very key.
Okay, any other items? One observation on my part, I think we covered a lot of territory tonight, and I think it demonstrated everybody's individual area of expertise and participation. So I think because of that, we end up with a better work product. So I appreciate everyone's participation.
Well, it takes a village, and we've got a good village.
Yeah, you
And
guys
that-
are doing a great job.
So with all that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'd make a motion.
Joe, second?
I second it.
That's you, Skip?
Yes.
And does anyone have the audacity to object to this motion?
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank
A
you,
nice
guys.
night.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Night.